If we reduce methane from sources such as beef and dairy and so on, then we can pull carbon from the atmosphere. We can actually reduce warming by reducing methane, and that makes animal agriculture part of a climate solution.
Welcome to Rumination Podcast, the podcast that offers practical solutions to the challenges and opportunities in our industry. Hi, I'm Chris Quinn, your host, and today I'm talking with Dr. Frank Mitloehner, professor and air quality specialist in cooperative extension in the Department of Animal Science at the University of California, Davis. Dr. Mitloehner received his MS degree in animal science and agriculture engineering from the University of Leipzig in Leipzig, Germany, and his PhD degree in animal science from Texas Technical University. Dr. Mitloehner is an expert in agricultural air quality, livestock housing, and husbandry. He conducts research that is directly relevant to the mitigation and understanding of air emissions from livestock operations, as well as the implications of these emissions on the health and safety of farm workers and their neighboring communities. Dr. Mitloehner has served as the chair of Global United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, partnership project to benchmark the environmental footprint of livestock production. He served as the work group member at the President's Council of Advisors of Science and Technology, and as a member of the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine Committee on a framework for assessing the health, environmental, and social effects of the food industry. Dr. Mitloehner, welcome to Ruminations, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You have researched, I should say, and studied and presented a great deal on the approach of evaluating impact of ruminant agriculture. Can you summarize your findings versus what we often see reported in media today?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion out there, and that is largely caused by people not understanding how the contributions of livestock to greenhouse gases are really quite different compared to, let's say, other sources such as fossil fuel sources. And here, in particular, because of the role that methane plays. Methane is the most important greenhouse gas from animal agriculture. And it is true that beef, dairy, and other livestock species do produce a sizable amount of methane. It's called biogenic methane. But what is oftentimes left out of the discussion is the fact that methane, while it's very potent in trapping heat from the sun, it is also short-lived. And that means that once it's in the air, it stays there for about a decade or so, and then it meets another molecule in the air that destroys it. And that causes the short lifespan of methane, again, approximately a decade. Contrast that to, let's say, CO2, carbon dioxide, which is by far the most abundant greenhouse gas, mainly caused by the burning of oil, coal, and gas. And that CO2 stays in the air for 1,000 years. So that's not to say methane doesn't matter. Methane matters, and we try to reduce it. But methane is different insofar that if we reduce methane from sources such as beef and dairy and so on, then we can pull carbon from the atmosphere. We can actually reduce warming by reducing methane. And that makes animal agriculture part of a climate solution.
No, fascinating. You've also presented on what you would call the 5 pillars of sustainability. I was wondering if you could review those for our audience today.
Yeah, when people hear sustainability, the term sustainability, they think they know what it means. To most people, it means environmental sustainability. But sustainability in the food sector is really broader than that. If you were to ask farmers what sustainability means, they would certainly list environmental sustainability as one, but only one of 5 pillars. Environmental sustainability includes air and water, impacts on soil, and so forth. And it is really, really critically important, but it's not the only one. Environmental sustainability is one pillar. The second one is animal welfare. The third one is food safety, keeping the food that we produce the safest as we can. A third pillar of sustainability. A fourth one is what I call workers. And what I mean by that is attracting and retaining a qualified workforce is of critical importance in sustainability. And in fact, most people in agriculture will tell you this is the number one, because it's getting harder and harder to attract people to work in agriculture. And the fifth pillar is financial viability. So making ends meet. So again, environmental quality, animal welfare, food safety, workers, and financial viability. 5 pillars of sustainability. All of them need to be considered. All of them need to be met in order to have a sustainable food supply.
No, and again, as you pointed out, we focus a lot on environment, importantly, but to not overlook the others pillars of sustainability. So thanks for sharing that and pointing that out. So with that in mind, what role can livestock producers and nutritionists and veterinarians and other influencers in the industries play in ensuring that these 5 pillars of sustainability are in fact respected and prolonged?
Well, I think what's really important is that the different players need to work together, because as you can imagine, when we are dealing with such a diverse set of objectives, we need to have veterinarians, we need to have nutritionists, we need to have agronomists, we need to have experts from different areas working together to uphold sustainability overall. Okay, and that oftentimes doesn't happen enough. What's also important is that we communicate very clearly with the public, with policymakers and others, as to how important sustainability is holistically, okay, from all aspects, and what it takes for those players to work together, and also what the role is that the public has, the role that policymakers have in order to advance sustainability. For example, if you want to reduce environmental footprint, it's possible, we can do it. But oftentimes it comes at a cost. Is the consumer willing to pay? Do we provide subsidies, let's say for reductions of methane, reductions of other pollutants, in order to help farmers achieve those reductions? Or do we just simply expect them to do it? And I can tell you, if the latter were the case, then we would just have farmers by the thousands leave their profession and say, you know what, we are already so at the margin of financial existence. If we are now pushed even harder, then we're out of here. And I think that would be the end of sustainability. So let's work together with our farmers. And I mean all the different disciplines work together with our farmers to achieve not just a secure, a safe, a healthy food supply, but also making it as environmentally and, as I said, the other sustainability areas as well, as sustainable as possible. It is possible. It is within reach. Let's work together.
Oh, some great points. So thank you for sharing that. And so just as we summarize, are there any key other take-home messages that you'd like to leave with the audience today in relation to the 5 pillars of sustainability?
In my opinion, what has really changed over the last few years is that particularly the younger generation is more and more interested in where their food comes from, how it's grown, how it should be prepared, how it should not be wasted, and so on. All of that is very important. In the past, farmers were just doing what they did best, grow food, and they didn't really have to worry about, the rest. Now they do. And they're not really trained to talking to people outside their profession. I think that is about to change because people want to know. And I think that many farmers have a really good story to tell, but they're too shy to do it, to tell it. And I think that needs to end. They need to tell their community, their family, and so on, what it is and why and how. And I tell you, most of them have really a good story to tell and something to be very proud of. And in fact, our entire society should be proud of those folks and work with them in those areas where improvements are needed. So again, let's work with the farming, with the food sector, the same way that we worked with the health sector during the pandemic. Okay, we have these 2 critically and strategically important sectors, the one providing food, the other one providing health. Let's treat the one like we do treat the other and make our societies most sustainable as a result.
Oh, very sage points. So thanks for reminding the audience of those things. As you pointed out, many of us in animal agriculture have some great stories to tell, and it's just a matter of getting out and doing that. So thank you for leading the charge. Dr. Mitloehner, thank you for your continued research on this timely subject. And thank you again for joining us today on the Rumination Podcast.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
And I surely want to thank our audience for listening to us today. So that you don't miss our next episode of Rumination Podcast, you can find us at jefo.ca, at Apple and Google Podcast, as well as Spotify. This podcast was brought to you by Jefo Nutrition, precision nutrition for a growing world.